everyone's quite comfortably settled. I'd like to start by welcoming you all to the town meeting, which is open to local government electors on the electoral roll of Penrith. The meeting is much more informal than our minuted town council meetings. We have a presentation coming on, but there's a couple more formal things to do. I'm afraid only people who are on the electoral roll of Penrith have a right to speak. No, make those points, it'll come later. First of all, the minutes of the Annual Town Council held on the 11th of April 2022 were on the chairs. I ask you personally to receive them. I'm not asking for approval of them, but receive them. Good. Right. We have a couple of questions prior to the deadline, which require a name and a response to be given. Question one was, what is the council's policy with regard to the removal of cash payment car park meters? Will the council support the need to keep these in Penrith, as there are a large percentage of the people in Eden who don't have the facility to pay via smartphone app? The answer, Eden District Council, which is now Westland and Furness Unitary Authority, own all the off-street car parks. A parking and movement study for Penrith was initiated in 2019, and during this exercise, the EDC added charging for parking by apps into car parks for convenience. All car parks now allow people to pay by cash or by app. Penrith Town Council will continue to lobby for this situation, so that cash and app are available for all council car parks the whole time. So we will do our best to see that people can still pay the old-fashioned way. The second question, when work commence on the A66 improvements, will the council have councillors / a subcommittee in place to look after the interest of residents who will be affected by the works? Penrith Town Council currently have representation on an A66 liaison group, which will continue. We've also raised issues of concern to residents who will potentially be affected by the development at that meeting, and to ensure that those concerns are taken into account, and where possible, changes made. The Planning Committee will consider any relevant issues that arise, and particularly controversial issues that be considered by full council. We will be watching, but I have to say that it will be limited as how much can be incurred. I've been a lot of meetings with the engineers doing the job, and they assure us they're going to keep the same number of lanes open on all the roads as currently, and I can see looking around the room there's a certain amount of cynicism as to well that's going to happen, but that is what they've said they're going to do, and it's not a county planning issue, it is a development consent order, which means the county council planners have not total power over it. So that's that. If there are any other questions, we're quite willing to take them. We can't give you an answer, but if you ask the question, if you're written down, and then if you leave afterwards, you leave your contact, we will get the answer to you. But we can't just dream up an answer on the spot. I think some people think it would be not accurate. Our theme is sustainability. We welcome groups to display what they're doing. When you finish, please have a look and talk to the people, the volunteers around here. Does anyone want to ask a question within the framework?
Charlie, I'd like to.
Yes, please.
Such a question as raising Mike Shepherd. As regards the tennis club encroachment into Castle Park, the work has now begun. The second gate has been opened, which I really strongly disapprove of personally.
Yes.
But friends in the bowling club, I'm not in it myself, tell me that they haven't been consulted at all about how it will affect them. Already they've had soil tipped onto the bowling green and gravel fallen off the lorries onto it. And they are concerned about the fact that the bower is no longer going to be increased in size, and presumably they will have to share it with the tennis club. I noticed that one of the things that the town council has an ambition to have an interest in or to look after is Castle Park.
Yes.
And I wonder, is there anything the town council can do to try and find out exactly what's happening, or could you give me the name of someone who's in charge of it at the new council who I can talk to? Seems unfair that there's not been much discussion about it.
Yeah, and yes, certainly.
We can get back to Mr Shepherd after the meeting.
We can get the contact for you.
Thank you.
We, as you said, we are hoping that sometime down the road, the local government reorganisation, the management of Castle Park will be returned, it will be given back to Penrith Town. But at the moment we have no influence, we have made our comments to their plans, and as you know, they withdrew their planning application, and it is all under delegated powers.
Can I ask if the town council has received anything from other residents in Penrith in the way of questions or complaints about what's going on?
We haven't.
Not officially to us. Some of the councillors may, but we as a council have. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Right. Speak now forever. Right. I now call upon, from my seat, Simon Wally from the Cumbria Wildlife Trust, who wants to give a short presentation to tell us about the plans they have for some land gifted to them at Carlton, just on the downside of Beacon Edge. All yours. How many you want to do?
You're not leaving me a biscuit.
No. Two.
I think you do a biscuit. Hi folks, I'm Simon Wally from the Cumbria Wildlife Trust. I'm a Penrith resident, just to put up on the new streets there. I was asked just to give a wee talk, maybe 5-10 minutes, about what we're planning to do with the land that's been gifted to us up on Beacon Edge. That's already started. We started consultations, and I've done quite a few consultations through the latter half of last year. My role is within the trust as a Westmoreland focus, but also that community development focus means it's really about enabling local people to work with the Wildlife Trust and enable more things to happen for nature. So that kind of really means that we want local folk to get involved in the planning, which is where we're at and been at. We've now started to do some work, but as we go forward, perhaps to take more control. And I've put this forward, and we've got that kind of way of working as we're looking forward with that piece of land. It was gifted by a Penrith resident. It's there. It'll be there now for beyond most of us in this room, our lifetimes. Always owned by the Wildlife Trust and always managed for wildlife and nature. So anything you can do to kind of enthuse more people to have more opinions about that and to come and do things is brilliant as far as I'm concerned. I'll just show you a few slides just to sort of be completely open for you, and I'm completely open to any conversations about ideas. But we've had quite a consultation so far. So I'm sure most of you know that, or probably know that some land's been gifted. That's Beacon Edge running across the top there. Most people don't seem to realise that it's all the fields. I count them as 3.5, the half a field there, 3 fields across there, to the first footpath that comes down closer to the round thorn. Not quite where the footpath's been extended to. You carry on to the next footpath, that's the footpath that's at the far end. And this piece at this end is just above the woodland that was owned by EDC and now by Westmoreland. So it's all of that land. It's just been sort of strained off at the bottom, and the new houses are being built right up to it as we speak. And the footpath across the bottom's currently closed with persimmons building work. And this piece here, which looks like it's open land, is all built on now, or just about to be built on. They're just finishing off. If you're up on the top, you can see the houses being finished off there. And we're also gifted this barn here, so there's a potential there. We consulted locally. The main idea, and sometimes with nature, people I think expect things to happen really quickly. Nature can be like that, but it can also be, it just takes a bit of time. So it's starting off with broadening out the hedges, and I don't know if anybody's seen, but there are 1,200 trees been planted on there in March. So it's sometimes amazing when you look from a distance, it doesn't look like 1,200 trees. But there are 1,200 smaller shrubs, should I say, the hawthorns, etc. So not tall trees. If you look, the square blocks are kind of may potentially be where a taller tree is planted and grows up. Consultation wise, obviously, for most of us that live in Penrith, people walk on Beacon Edge, the view is fantastic. We wouldn't want to grow a lot of tall trees on there and wipe out the view, that would be a bit, so that's not what. But we do want to make it a wilder space. The blue at the bottom is a pond, and the sort of pinker areas and what might be quite marshier. And those, again, there's actually a well, I don't know if anybody knows, a very historic well just close to that one, which again we're looking at, and we're speaking with a local expert about how we might make that a feature of the site. Two other things, which one is marked, so you can see the top corner there, that's going to be sort of taller trees, but it might end up being the whole of this top field that ends up being taller trees. Because again, it's above a block of woodland anyway, you know, that's not going to take out anybody's view, it will probably link in. We have had some conversations with EDC about the ownership of that piece and whether that passed or not, etc., and linking it all together. If you're interested and into nature, it's all about creating more spaces, more habitats for wildlife, and linking those up. We as a trust have managed reserves for years, conservation has managed reserves, but quite often what happens is that the creatures can't move around, and you get a population that actually just decreases, and you'll probably have seen a lot of declining graphs of species decreasing. We've got to join things up more, and we've got to work together much more. Far right corner there, again we discussed and talked about, and there will be a community orchard going in there. And that's one of those projects which I'm hoping that they will work really well with local folk. Have a look at the planning, have a look at what we put in there, have a look at how we landscape all of that. And that might even go the whole of the far end, so a community orchard on that side. We talked with Cold Springs, the care home. We'd quite like to put in this bottom corner here a sensory garden. And if at the care home there's a lot of folk living with dementia, it would be a brilliant access, just a brilliant point there. It would be open to everybody else, but with a main focus around the care home. So those are just some ideas and where we're at. There's a kind of graphic of it from above a bit more.
Can I ask a question for you?
Yeah, sure.
Where's your public access onto the site?
Let's come back. So public access at the moment, what we're talking about is, if I just come across here, there's one gate here, there's a footpath comes in, there's kind of a very obvious gate here, which will allow public access onto, probably across this part of the site. We're looking at some paths possibly coming up here. The brown strip, which I didn't explain that well, we're looking to hopefully make that kind of 8 metres wide, a walkway right across the top. Trying to look at notions of making it as accessible as possible, but that's quite a big scheme to think about how we do that, and chatting about whether you can get any access off the lay-bys, etc. That would give us a walkway across the top. If we can chat with EDC, etc., we can potentially, as somebody will know, there's a footpath that comes in from that side, and kind of comes in here, and the youngsters ride the mountain bikes and have a nice time in there. But it's potentially, if you put a gate in there, you could make it quite an easy access across. And there's a very obvious desire line from about here, comes across the top there and goes back to that point. So it's being managed for wildlife, so it's not about, when we consulted again, people didn't want it to sort of open access for people just to let the dogs run off. That was quite strong. So we tried to link it in with existing potential dog walks, going up onto the beacon there, and somebody could do a walk around it and back off, but actually keeping, as it develops, it'll get wilder, so some people will explore. We're not kind of about people not exploring, because in reality this piece of land isn't that valuable to wildlife at the moment. It's been grazed by sheep for years. It's not what we designate as special quality, but therefore it's actually great for us to kind of experiment with a little bit with local folk and see what grows. What was interesting on the this one, when we did do a survey, there's actually quite a few of wax cap fungi on there, which again might become a bit of a feature. We're going to have to survey and think about that over a period of time, which is quite unusual. So that's just a graphic the same from above. A little bit more detail on there. Filled in this corner, and with the stars of potentially thinking about gates, etc. You may have seen there's a fencing contractor now. They've fenced off this block. The trailer's parked about here. They've fenced off this piece, and they will be fencing off the others. Because at the moment we've got a grazier, and we're going to work with that grazier for at least the next year or so, see how we go, keep going with that. Obviously again with grazing and wildlife, it's kind of if you have sheep or you have cattle, it's a management issue with that, and just thinking about that over a period of time. But we're working with our existing grazier and seeing how that develops. talking about a species-rich pasture, so that's what it might start to look like. We've got some days already lined up in September for planting plug plants. We've got thousands to go in there, and I'm already starting to line up. So if anybody wants to volunteer to plant little plug plants in there, it's going to be quite a scheme about September time. So it may become more colourful from a distance, as opposed to the green. And this is something I just wanted to add on to the back of that. What I'm working with is something we're calling Wilder Cumbria. We need to join up things a lot more and actually make a movement of that. So I just put the title in there, Wilder Penrith. We're talking to the guys at Eden Rivers Trust, we're talking to the gardeners, we're talking to lots of people about how we can make more green connections across Penrith. And I think, you know, a lot of people in this room to do with nature, that's going to be only good for Penrith residents, only good for the wildlife, and really to have a think about that and how we take that forward over a number of years. So part of my remit is making that happen Cumbria wide. If you bring that down, you can have a Wilder Penrith. But again, it's going to have to be something that people would have to join in with. And that's about connecting, encouraging, and enabling individuals to take action. I hear a lot of talk. We all see with lots of issues, there's lots of talk. Actually, we've got to do things. And nature is in a crisis. We have got an opportunity, I think, our generation and the next few generations to make a massive difference. But we've also got an opportunity to sit back again, not do so much, and not leave the world in as good a place for folk afterwards. And that's just pictures of me as a kid, 2 years ago. Really to make the point that it's for everybody, young and old, and that, you know, if people want to get involved, we're not going to be saying, well, you're too young, you're too old, whatever. Come and get involved. And that's kind of from the sort of conservation speak about this. More, bigger, better, and joined up. So that's actually from the Lawton report in 2012. And that's about connecting and joining things up as a principle. And if we don't do that, as I say, these reserves, you'll keep the species there, but you won't see them anywhere else. So locally, you know, we've got red squirrels. Obviously, we've got to think about if they were going to be attracting them towards this site, how do they get across the edge, the beacon edge? So we have talked about a rope bridge. These things do exist at other roads. Red squirrels will quite happily go across a road. You know, it's always an issue, isn't it? Wildlife and roads. But where we are, it's quite likely to happen anyway. Some of those squirrels will come down to people on Beacon Edge, and the potential is that they could come further. So it's just things to think about, really. All of which we'll do. And that's just Wilder Cumbria, so that's kind of a little bit more about my team and stuff. And pretty much all my life, if you like, but most recently, I guess, certainly with the nature stuff, I'm always asking people to work together better. It's kind of like we can have all sorts of small arguments about stuff, but actually if we're going to make a difference, we have to work together. So we've kind of looked at the future, and especially with this project, we're setting up a steering group to manage the site. It's only going to have 2 members of the Wildlife Trust on there, myself, conservation guy who's got a lot of knowledge, and it's going to have 6 local people on. I've been told at community college, we've already got 1 member, they're going to have a rolling seat on there. We've talked to the scouts and guides about having a similar place on there. We've consulted and we've got maybe 3 or 4, I've actually got 20 or 30 names of people local to the site, either at Scores or towards Carlton, who are interested in managing. And obviously quite a lot of people interested in volunteering. But it's about that sort of local ownership of, because again, that's, you know, and we know, one issue here is, see, there's litter from those top containers that blows over onto the site. We're going to have to regularly kind of maintain that and see what we can do about it. There's all sorts of other things, developing the barn, developing the pond. We talked to, you know, and had conversations at Beaconside School. It's going to be a brilliant resource for the primary school. A couple of hundred, maybe 400 yards to visit a pond, to do some pond dipping every year. So, you know, creating these opportunities for the scouts and the guides, etc. And also local residents. If you've got some nice benches across the top there, lots of people go up there and sit and have the road in front of them. Well, actually, if you bring those benches just down into the fields a bit, you'll be able to do that with the cars behind you and take that on, and lovely spots for picnics, etc. So I think it's a brilliant thing for Penrith. I've only lived in Penrith for 4 years. I've lived in this area for about 12 years. If I was a young kid, we were just talking to somebody about growing trees and then seeing that tree grow up as you grow up. You know, you don't get those opportunities. So I think it's just a brilliant opportunity, really. I'm happy to take any questions about that either now or in the future. I say, you know, people can have my details. and anything you want to do and how you want to be part of that, I'd love to just have conversations about it and make it happen really. And we have a chance to make it happen. That land is there now. We've all got a chance, locally to be involved. I think that's about all I need to say, all I want to say.
Is that land gifted in perpetuity?
Yeah.
Free to say who gifted it?
Yeah, I'm just trying to, Anne and Brian Clark.
The people who own, the family own the Scores farm,
for years.
for which the estate has been developed, and they sold a lot of the land that was sold personally from the development would have been their land.
I'm sure you've seen plans with houses all over.
Yeah.
So there are, so it could have been all houses all the way
Yeah,
to
it
the
was
edge.
set for housing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Going back to the map, is there a link with any other sort of green area? Is it a corridor in any way, or is it?
But there's green areas beyond it towards
Yeah.
the Pennines.
There's quite, there's the whole of the beacon behind up there.
What's
There's a link
something to
across
the
here.
right of it? Is that just a pasture, bit of pasture land?
It's where the horses are at times, and so it's just pasture at the moment,
At the
yeah.
moment,
Yeah. But all these things,
Soon to be Nether Carlton.
Yeah.
so
it goes on down to that road,
there's-
down past
there's-
the haulage contractor.
Is it Cowrate Quarry, a
Cowrate.
bit further on? So again, things can be joined up, and that's how we have to think. And it's all those sorts of questions. Well, what's next then? Because again, something like this, 1 minute you're not thinking about it, the next minute once it's been gifted, you are thinking about it. So things can change actually quite quickly. But in itself, it's a very big reserve. And what's nice, it's on the side of the town, so people can walk there. And again, we've typically had reserves which are out in the countryside, and you have to take your car to get there.
When you said that you weren't like with people all over it, would it be like some of the other reserves where there are footpaths that people can walk?
It's quite likely, as a sense, that you put footpaths, and then most people stay to those footpaths.
Yes.
Some people, I'm a wildlife photographer, so I tend to just wander off wherever I want to
Most people
go.
don't like the
Most people don't do that. Most people actually, if you put a path there, they'll stick to the path or go off a small bit of it. And we are managing it for wildlife, so that
Yes.
people can see more wildlife closer to you. There's more habitat. Is the technical term that sometimes used, or where creatures live.
I'm just going to ask why the grazing is continuing.
Partly because we have a grazier. It's a big conversation we've had internally. Partly because actually by the grazing is what's created the habitat for the waxcap mushrooms to develop. And sometimes when things are there and they're a protected species, you can't just change that overnight. There's, we've had this conversation backwards and forwards, and I think it'll carry on. How much grazing for how long? And whether that changes the cattle.
Some old duff Jeremy.
Because cattle. We do have sheep on some reserves, we don't have them on others. So it's a kind of, at the moment that's only set for this year because it's only an annual lease. So,
But it's just sheep.
yeah, it is at the moment, yeah. Now we want to talk with our grazier and see about that and see whether if we say, well, it's good to move to cattle very quickly, do they want to move to cattle? Do they not,
It's an interesting question. Will the mushrooms disappear if they're not trampled on by cattle? I don't know.
I'm not a super expert on that, but there's that potential. So it's really interesting when you inherit a site. You might have all sorts of plans for it, but when you survey it and see what's there, and if that's a protected, and if that's something which is quite unique, because there aren't that many wax caps around, then you might end up managing a part of the site for wax caps, which might just be one field, and then which actually means for our grazier, then there's only a quarter of the grazing there was. So it's an ongoing discussion, but we're having all those discussions openly.
Yeah. Having a discussion with school about any sort of form of like forest school type facilities. I don't mean private enterprise operation, but as an extension of the school.
The school, it'll be open as a site
Yes.
for schools, Penrith, certainly primary schools,
Yes.
to go and use and do surveys. And I talked with the guides and the scouts about what a fantastic space for you to take youngsters to, whether it's about artwork, surveying, etc. And just thinking about that. We've got a forest school provider about 5 miles down the road, Skelton there. So it's interesting again, we would always have those conversations with, do we want to compete with? It's probably not the best site for a forest school. So, you know.
I was just curious.
Yeah, no, yeah, too, sure.
And the other
I
thing
mean,
is,
we look for schools, by the way.
yeah, sure, yeah,
That's
so
about
no.
people learning
No, fine.
about nature.
I'm slightly, have a vested interest here, because I'm on the Scores Tenants Residents
As long as it's
Association.
declaring it, that's all right.
The Scores Tenants Residents Association, and the matter has come up
Right,
on
okay.
occasions
Yeah, yeah.
in that group of how that's it. And the other question that's come up, and I'm sure it's come up to you, is if people are going to come from other schools and other areas, where are they going to park?
Well, one of the
So I hate to be mundane.
No, it's fine. Within the consultation, we've got 3 or 4 people asking for parking. As a wildlife trust, it's one of the unique sites where you can walk to it, and there's plenty of parking in the town. So we didn't think, actually, we should go out of our way to spend a lot of time on parking. I don't think a lot of people will come to it from outside of Penrith, if I'm honest, if we look at the future. If that becomes an issue, because there are, as I say, there are other sites and there are commercial providers that schools can go to and will go to.
Yeah.
So it's a definite question.
It's just a question. That
We didn't want to take any of the site to create parking, for sure. Now there's within this yard here, but one of the issues we have is access. Within this building there, and that yard is available to us. Now that might become, a couple of spaces for people who want that access, but we're also looking at that, whether we can link in via the lay-bys, just for that kind of more accessible space. But it's rare to have a nature reserve where 15,000 people can walk to it. And that's probably going to be our
number of people who can't walk.
No, if they can't walk, but I'm saying are local to it.
Yes.
So we don't. I mean, if somebody had gifted us another piece of land and said that looked ideal for a car parking space, it might have been more of a discussion.
Sorry, Simon.
No, it's fine. I'm totally open to having these conversations, but sometimes people don't get the answers they particularly wanted. But that's
tough. I know.
Yeah.
Do you remember we had a discussion quite early on about the cemetery and people wanting to be buried in in the tree area, which eventually, I guess, will be quite full. And the idea of ashes and a tree, commemorative tree, and whether that bit of land next to the woodland could have been the area where people could have bought a tree and paid for its maintenance to give you the income for 5 years, 10 years, or whatever. Did that get rejected at some point?
Yes, it did. Within internally, partly in essence, in terms of income, it's not going to generate a lot necessarily for the trust. One of the things we are talking about, and we'll discuss with folk, is potentially growing trees and then bringing them to plant them here, but not necessarily as with ashes there, with urns, with any plants. So it would be but we would be managing that. When we talked about that as a living forest, that was managed by an organisation which, to be fair, they're not anywhere near Cumbria. So it's kind of like, that's always a possibility, and you've done some of that with the cemetery, etc. But I think we'll grow trees there. And, I've had a couple of conversations tonight. It would be great if youngsters could grow their trees at home, at some point bring them along, plant them in there, and as I say, then see them grow with their own lifestyle, within their lifetime, but without any plaques, without any ashes being put on there, without any shrines being made of that, which is always a potential.
Because I just planted 5 people that died that I know. And the families were in tears at the thought that there was a tree that was dedicated to their...
Totally agree with you, very emotive. I would plant them for my parents if I could.
And it was just that facility we don't have.
Sure, no, I think it's a brilliant thing.
Yeah.
And if the town want to think about that, something that they want to do, then I would be supportive of it. And I'd probably plant, as I said, I'd plant a couple for my parents. So totally emotive. It's just about whether it's right for the wildlife trust on this site in that place.
Because we haven't got any.
And that's not to say people can't come and plant those trees, plant a tree in that space, because, as I say, we just talked about that corner to start with, but in reality, the whole of that field, it's quite likely to be taller trees as we go forward. When I suppose it's just that balance of that and the management forward going forward.
So you can't, with the trees, you don't need to put a plaque on them. But, there's a clam hood in the lakes at Wasdale, and trees were bought, planted there years ago. There's a map in the hut showing where they are. And it's AB Haggies or whoever.
And if we all got together and could create a project like Trees for Life, which is doing the Caledonian forest across Scotland, so if you looked at that and lots of people give money to plant, you know, in memory of, now that's a potential for this area if we all work together. But again, what we need is land with all these things. But I would go a much bigger scale than this. You know, and if that's a potential, and that might be something we could look at linking together. So if you're interested in that, I'd fully recommend having a look at Trees for Life. There's a guy in Scotland been doing this, and he's up into the millions of trees and people he's got brought into that project. And they are, you know, the Caledonian forest is being completely reforested across the middle of Scotland. Scotland's ahead of us in terms of this thinking. That's me saying as an Englishman. It's way ahead of us.
No more space.
Potentially, or you could say they've just got on and done it in some senses.
Just
you know?
do it.
Yeah, because the Lake District again, you get to be protected, so we're just outside it. So yeah, I'll stop now if you want me to.
No, I tried to say just do it. We tried to do something with the council and they've chopped the forest in half down, so we can have made it. So,
Oh, that's what paper is talking about it. But again, you know, if anybody knows anybody who owns land who wants to gift it to the Wildlife Trust or anybody for creating living forests, you know, let's get out there and ask about it and make it happen. Any other questions? Or and I would urge you to have a look at all these guys around the side, because you know, I've chatted to pretty much everybody at different times around here, and we are all on the same side. We're all doing things that are moving things in the right direction.
Yes. Thanks very much. Well, thank you very much. So, if that's it.
Yeah.
I think I'm off agree with everything.
Me and you never fully agree on everything, Charlie. Come on.
Come on, no.
Right?
Right. Okay. Not wishing to send everyone home, and you have the chance to look around these things, I'd like to thank everybody for attending, especially the people that came with presentations, and I hope that this will form part of an attempt at some networking by people who maybe discovered things that they didn't even know happened in Penrith. Sorry.
May I beg a few words to talk to people about the Asian hornet? 2 minutes? Is that okay?
Yes, no problem.
Lovely. This is not such good news, so it might be sending you home with a mission of something you need to do, but it's not a happy state of affairs. Asian hornet, the equivalent of Putin to the insect world. Putin is small but highly dangerous, and so is this little creature. 2004, one fertilised queen Asian hornet came into Bordeaux in a pack of pottery from China, where it had overwintered. And their life cycle is such that the queens go into the winter fertilised, and then they come out in the spring and they form a very small nest. And that small nest starts with a few hornets that then go out and find a better nesting site. Now, that one queen, 2004, those Asian hornets now are right the way through France, through Belgium, through Germany, through Italy, through Spain, through Portugal. They can destroy a bee's hive colony within 2 hours. They hawk it, they catch the bees, they take them up into a tree, they pull off their heads, they pull off their legs, they take the abdomen with all the nice nectar that the bees have collected back to the nest to feed their pupa. And when they build that big nest for themselves, those nests are about 2 meters in height, very round, and they can produce 200 fertilised queen hornets in one season. And each queen hornet can fly about 100 kilometres, which is why they have spread so far. In Asia, where they've come from, the bees and the hornets have evolved over thousands of years. Those types of bees there know how to deal with it. Now, if you think, well, that's no big deal, I don't eat honey very much, it doesn't mean much to me, just think on. because they're not taking out just the bees, they're taking out the insects as well. So in parts of France now, they're calling it Silent France because the bird life has disappeared. This is a very nasty creature. So it started to appear, sightings in the UK in 2016. We've managed to keep it under. Nothing has got established yet. DEFRA and FERA have these tracking teams, and once there's been a sighting, they come into that area, they track it back to its potential nesting site. And then a cherry picker will go up during the night when the Asian hornets are in their nest and put the poison in to get rid of it. We are just aware that it is now heading for Cumbria. It's not a tourist that's going to go away. It's a tourist that's going to want to stay, because what it depends on is water, because they build these huge nests out of a papery substance they create like wasps do from the wood around them. We have plenty of wood in Cumbria. They need water to masticate that. We have water here. And they would like our climate. They actually come from quite a cool part of Asia. So we have everything here for them, the perfect habitat, but we just don't want them. They are not only dangerous to insects, their sting kills. So they have overrun Jersey now. 22 people died in Jersey last summer because of stings from Asian hornets. So we have just started this campaign to ask the general public to look out for them. They are, as I say, they're small. We're not looking for a massive thing, but it does have bright yellow legs and an orange face and an orange segment on its back. And we don't want you to confuse it with the hornets that we would like to keep. So this identification chart is helpful. When you're out and about, be looking out for them. But the message is, do not touch, because we don't want you getting stung. The message is, snap it with your phone, send it to this particular, what do they call them? Non-native species alert. And the computers, if you can do it on your phone and through this particular app, the computers there sort out the pictures that are accurate. And when it spots and identifies one that's been sent in as an Asian hornet, your picture and your information will have a postcode on it, and out will come the SWAT team to try and track it down and hopefully deal with it. So one came into Northumberland 2 weeks ago in a pack of vegetables. That's what happens. We can get them coming into Penrith through the trucks that are coming in through our people coming back from their holidays in France. They're coming in people's suitcases, in their caravans. They're heading for Cumbria. No, that's what. So we need you to be alert, looking at. Got plenty of sheets over there, and if you want to leave me your email address, I can send it to you electronically so you can buzz it around your networks. Okay,
Thank you much.
thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Right. Okay. Have a look and see what people have got to